Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 182. Pardon me for a second while I do my little boomer tech stuff. Alright, should be right. Yep. And is this one okay? I think so, yes. Okay, as per usual, I have no guests with me right now. One of the things I really love about streaming is you never know if you're going to get any guests. Although actually I did say he would be joining us at some point. So I don't know how long we'll go. If it's just me, we will not go very long. But I've said that before, so there we go. Today, of course, we had the Tommy Robinson, the Tommy Robinson rally in London. Those people who followed this channel for quite a long time will know that I am not a huge Tommy Robinson fan. I think he's too deeply involved with some Zionist elements, shall we say, who are, to me at least, not British. Duke Valentino in the chat is asking me how Lady of Shalott is. Lady of Shalott is on my Discord. She was speaking on the. She was writing on the Discord today. She's not at all well, but she is still alive and kicking, and she's fighting as you would expect Lady of Shalott to fight. I don't know that I can really give people any more information than that without Lady of Shalott telling me I can. But yeah, she's not well, obviously, Duke Valentino, but she's fighting back. She's a tough lady. Yeah, she was typing on the Discord today and talking to various other Discord members. So she's still around, mate. That's all I can really tell you without asking her permission to give you more information. So yeah, to get back to what I was saying, I've got my problems with Tommy Robinson. He's leaving aside the Zionist connections. There's a lot of grifting and what have you goes on around him, and always has. I think most of the ordinary people who went to that demo, the average ordinary people who were just at the demonstration, I think they're good people. I was quite happy to hear them chanting, "We want our country back," because, that's true. And like I say, most of the ordinary people there are good people. I'm a bit dubious about Carl Benjamin supporting it, because Carl Benjamin does know the backstory of Tommy Robinson. So I don't know why he's supporting it. Every time, I was saying this in Discord earlier, every time I think Carl Benjamin, that's Sargon in the past, takes like 3 steps forward, then he will take 1 step back again for some reason, I don't understand that. And like on Twitter, he's blocked friends of mine for criticizing him, which to me is not something you should be doing, especially when someone's just trying to point out to you, this is not a sensible thing to do, Carl. I was looking at all the people who are posting stuff from the demo on Twitter, and you're getting the black girls singing, and as usual, you get the Israeli flags and the Iranian flags and the Palestinian flags, and you name it. I don't, not Palestinian actually, because of the Zionism bit, but Iranian flags certainly, and Sikhs. And, people on Twitter are posting pictures of 2 black young ladies singing and saying, "Oh, look at the nasty far right racist." I mean, does anyone these days think that merely having some black women singing at your event or a couple of Sikh guys at your event is going to stop the left calling you far right. It's not. They're still going to call you far right. They're still going to call you fascists. You know, if the left didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all, basically. So yeah, I don't. Like I said, I'm not going to criticize the ordinary people that went to that event, who I think their heart's in the right place. Like I said, no one's going to disagree with chanting "We want our country back," because we do. But yeah, I can't bring myself to support Tommy Robinson. I'm afraid I just can't. There's too much backstory to him, for me anyway. But yeah, that was the first thing I was going to talk about. And if any of my guests eventually arrive, perhaps we'll get some more. We shall see. If anyone in the chat's got any questions, this is a good time to ask them. Sorry, gents, I was just typing on my Discord to see when and if I might have some guests around. Have I ever lived in Spain? Duke Valentino asked me. No, but I've been to Spain a few times, but I've never lived there. Is he containment? Who are you asking is containment, Duke Valentino? Do you mean Tommy Robinson? If you mean him, then yes, quite possibly. Although he's a strange sort of containment because he gets thrown in jail at regular intervals. But yeah. I hope the sound is all right, gents. Okay. I know that when AI joins us, he usually comes on a little bit later because he has to make his way home from work and what have you. Yes, I do meet you, Sargon. Yeah. I think is Sargon containment? I don't know about that because Sargon's come quite a long way over the last few years from his really liberal stage. But as someone said in my Discord today, I think at heart Sargon still is a liberal. I don't think I don't think he's completely broken with that at all. So yeah. And I think that's the problem, and that's why he falls into this, like doing this thing with Tommy Robinson and what have you. I did notice that at the event today, there were less Israeli flags than one normally sees at a Tommy Robinson event. Most of the people I watched on videos that were put up on X, on Twitter, were carrying British or they were carrying British, English, Scottish, Welsh flags, that sort of thing. Was Tommy Robinson pro-vaccine? I can't honestly remember, Duke Valentino. But since I never took the vaccine, I didn't pay attention. The sailors JMH in the thumbnail are a naval landing party, and they've got a 12-pounder quick-firing gun that actually was used extensively in the Anglo-Boer War, 1899 to 1902, because the naval 12-pounder outranged the British Army's contemporary 15-pounder gun. And the Boer artillery was very modern German and French stuff and actually outranged most of the British Army stuff. Steve, did I see the story about General Roland Walker saying UK needed to be ready for war in 3 years? I did actually. The new chief of the was this the new chief of the General Staff? I was even going to put a video about it up on my Discord. I didn't in the end because it was too depressing. Because he was suggesting that the tiny British Army, which is these days barely 70,000 men and far too many women, it will triple its fighting power in 3 years. First of all, I don't think that's possible. Secondly, he was suggesting it could be done via better comms, and communications has never been the strong suit of the British Army, quite the reverse, in fact, and also by connectability, which is one of those modern military buzzwords which I detest. And I get what they're talking about with connectability, but it'll only go so far. And a 72,000-man army, or whatever it is, I think it might even be less than that now because it's under-recruited and good, is not going to last 2 minutes in a major war against a near-peer adversary like Russia or China. British Army wouldn't last a month. A month of fighting in Ukraine would see the British Army basically destroyed because of the size it is now. Even if it was not losing, even if it was winning, just the casualties would see it being practically useless after a month to 6 weeks of fighting. So, you have to have a certain amount of mass in an army still, you do. And without it, your army will not last very long. And that's leaving aside that there are far too many women in the British forces now, who in a war like in Ukraine will not do any good. Despite a little bit of propaganda from the Ukrainian side and far less from the Russian, there are very few women in frontline roles in Ukraine on either side. So, yeah. I think our best bet in regard to Ukraine is that Trump wins the US election and does some sort of deal to call it off. I think that's what we should hope for anyway. Mitch in the chat is saying Discord is not bothering to load for him. Mitch, would you like me to send you to the stream link via Twitter? Because I can do that. And I will. Excuse me a second, boys. There we go. Assuming that's what it is. Oh, of course it's not. Forgive me, people. I'm sorry about the dead air, but I'm sending Mitch a link via Twitter. Bum, 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 bum. Assuming I can. There you go. Okay, Mitch, I sent you a link via Twitter, mate. Don't know if that'll do you any good. Okay, where are we? Right, what have I missed? Will they have to be vaccinated? I take it Duke Valentino is talking about yes, I know how to send a link. Yeah, I take it Duke Valentino is talking about if they do some sort of conscription in Britain. That wouldn't surprise me, although in America, where they did do that, and they actually chucked out quite a lot of military people who wouldn't take the vaccine. They've actually gone back on that now because their recruiting figures are so bad. Is all of the UK military vaxxed? I don't know about that, mate. I didn't follow it closely. I do, like I say, I do know that the American military chucked quite a lot of people out who wouldn't take the vaccine. But since they all got letters inviting them back, because their recruiting figures in America are just as bad as they are in Britain, because people don't want to die in these useless wars for LGBTQ nonsense. You know, who wants to die for that? I didn't watch it, by the way, but I've been seeing all sorts of people saying that the opening ceremony for the Olympics in France, in Paris, which, as I say, I didn't watch. I won't watch any of the Olympics. I have no interest in it whatsoever. Apparently, it was full of trannies and all that kind of stuff and satanic nonsense. You know, and people so complained about it that the Olympic people were trying to take down videos of it, which I found quite amusing. I mean, what were these people thinking? It's just incredible to me. Steve, you're exactly the same. The only reason I knew it was underway was because I saw someone mention it on Twitter. I wouldn't have seen it otherwise. I mean, there was a golden calf, apparently, and all sorts of things. And as I say, they were taking the mickey out of the Last Supper with trannies, which strikes me as extremely strange to do for an Olympic opening ceremony. What were these people thinking? JMH is asking how many men there are under arms in Britain today. Well, you can't really find out how many men there are because there are far too many women. But the British Army is about 70,000 at the most. Royal Navy is about 20, I think. Royal Air Force will probably be less than that. And then there's maybe 60,000 reservists, you know, like territorial army type dudes. It's the British Army and the Royal Navy have never been smaller since, well, in the case of the Royal Navy, they've never been smaller since before the Spanish Armada in 1588. The British Army haven't been smaller than like in about 1690 was the last time the British Army was this tiny. It really is. It's a very tiny force. And if it was involved in a near-peer conflict, like, say, what's going on in Ukraine at the moment, even if it was winning within 6 weeks or so, it would be basically useless from casualties. Did I do that? I think I did. Let me see. How are you going, AI? Oops, I didn't know. One, two. There you go. Good evening, AI, and good evening, Mitch.
Hello. Sorry, I'm distracted by Mitch's profile on here at the moment.
Japanese dude, yeah.
No, I'm doing.
We won't say what that is behind him. It's just some old symbol.
No, I'm okay, Iron Duke. I
noticed AI that you were posting earlier in the week about the Tommy Robinson thing today, and I was talking about that. before you arrived, and I wondered what you thought of it, and in particular, what you thought of Sargon of Akkad backing it. You know, Carl Benjamin of the Lotus Eaters.
He always actually blocked me.
I mean, it's complete. Yeah. Yeah, he's been. We've sort of had a back and throw, and he's had a back and throw with Apostolic Majesty. I mean, at the end of the day, this whole thing of this whole grift that Robinson and his crowd push as some form of, because number one, they don't refer to themselves as nationalists, but what they do is they suck any nationalist energy from the right and from the real patriotic crowd, and this is done because it's done through the lens of effectively another flavor of international liberalism. You can't. The purpose of nationalism and patriotism is that it's exclusive. It is only adherent to those people in that place. Same with Japanese nationalism or German nationalism or Russian or whatever. It is particular to that group of race. And instead, what we've got an international alliance, as Carl puts it, between between the EDL types, Zionists, and Iranian monarchists. And then let's look at our alliance here for a second. You got one group who was so inept and degenerate that they allowed Shia mullahs to overthrow and take over the country during a time, mind you, that the religious fanaticism of Islam was not. It was in its infancy. Mainly, the Middle East was dominated by Arab nationalists, communists, Iranian nationalists. So it was they managed to foster a society where the mullahs were able to take over. And then you look at the other side, the Zionists, who the more nationalist element of Zionism, as we know, is incredibly anti-Christian. There's hundreds of videos going around in Israel of them spitting on nuns or invade or literally they're sitting in churches or church grounds and berating people wandering in. So this is complete and utter lunacy. I think at the end of the day, Carl is just a liberal. He has this sort of fantasy notion that if we have all these different groups, we'll be palatable for the wider masses. And the thing though is you can't find nationalism through mass culture. The movement that everyone wants to happen in this country and in the West, it can't be found through mass culture, because mass culture is the problem that is created. If you look at that march today, all that symbolizes to me is the problems and the ills that modern Britain has created. It's not a solution, it's a problem. And to be honest, I haven't watched any of the marches. I've seen a few photos, of course, people have posted, but I mean, mentally wise, I've just stepped over it, because it is complete and utter a fantasy that's being proposed here.
I do think that most of the ordinary people who went on that march are probably their hearts in the right place. I'm not going to throw those guys under the bus. The ordinary average men and women who just took part in the march. If you're talking about someone like Carl Benjamin from the Lotus Eaters, I think he should know better, because he does know the backstory of Tommy Robinson. He must do by now. But I'm not going to throw all the ordinary people there under the bus with their Union Jacks and England flags and Scottish and Welsh flags. Those guys, I think their heart's in the right place. Although, as you rightly say, supporting Tommy Robinson is not the way to do it.
Well, I mean, it is fundamentally, this. He does know better, Carl, because he's been exposed, like to all of us, to elite theory. In fact, he's been exposed to a lot of the energy and the thinking on the right for a long time now. He's been exposed to the, and this is where I'll be careful how I frame this, but the reality is, as we know, if you were to look at between, and I know like a big theme in these marches is Islamism and Marxism. Now, if you were to look at it from, and he's done streams, countless streams on other channels and on Lotus Eaters, where he looks at basically which is more of a destructive force, Marxism or liberalism. And on every metric, and by most metric of nationalists in Europe on the right, your real nationalists, dating back from the post-war, with Electoral and stuff, it's noted that while Marxism corrupts the body of the nation, turns it, the visuals of the body into, not a very pleasant place to live, it's liberalism which corrupts the very soul of it. I mean, okay, we're going to probably talk about the Paris Olympics. I mean, again, that's a classic example of the corruption and the soul destroying effect that liberalism has, and also that when it encounters aspects of high culture, it takes it and completely inverses its values. And because of the way the right is at the moment, because you have a lot of populists who've been influenced by these engagement farm accounts like Libs of TikTok and others, who create these straight up lies about, oh look, this is like look at, this is what's happening in Europe, look at these black men in Europe, and it's like, this is an interview from South Africa 10 years ago. I will probably talk about the Olympics, and while yes, there were aspects of it which denigrated aspects of Christianity, it's quite clear, for example, and it may not be popular with you, but the Olympics, everything, there is a connection obviously to Greek mythology. I think the white horse, which every MAGA boomer evangelical under the sun has been sort of harping on today, has been saying, oh yeah, this is quoting biblical verses, the white the white horse and death upon it and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, the reality is, if you actually see the images, it's quite clearly it's Pegasus with I presume Perseus riding it or something. It's nothing.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. This is the thing. It's these ridiculous populist, low information accounts, which is making the right into just another like dipshit libtard version of the left. I mean, it's just frustrating to see. It's really blackpilling. And yeah, I mean, the majority of those people at the marches today, they probably are patriots and everything and everything. But at the end of the day, we've all become, I mean, Duke Valentine, if you want to obsess over, Greek mythology and go down, sort of, the evangelical dipshit route, then that's good for you. But yeah.
AI, could I just ask you? But I see what you're saying about the white horse and all that. I get it, absolutely. But what about the what seemed to me anyway, from what I saw on Twitter, because I only watched what people put up on Twitter, because I'm not interested in the Olympics at all. But what about the piss take of the last stopper with transvestites? That struck me as a bit strange, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that of course the Olympics, it denigrated Christianity, it denigrated European civilization. And it wasn't, but the thing though is, the right's take on it is, well, it denigrated it because it was satanic and it was evil. My position is, okay, let's step away from, the sort of kooky American Christian version of this a sec, and let's just look at it. What they've done is they've taken a sport rooted in Greco-European culture, where they take Greek icon, Greco-Roman, gods, effectively, and mythical connections to that, and they've just inverted it and made it into, the sort of infected it with what people call DEI, diversity and equality and everything, inclusion. That's my position on it. But when you have people looking at things, people on the right who claim to be on the right, look at high culture and say, oh, that's just satanic. I mean, that's just a pure peasant take. It's pure peasant. It's juvenile and it's ridiculous. It is fundamentally ridiculous, and I have no time for it. If you want to say they denigrated it and say that, because this is the thing, there's this argument between both sides on this, where you have a peasant take saying, oh, look, it's all satanic, and then you have the liberals saying, oh, look, look at these stupid people on the right, they don't know high culture, they don't know the European connection. But even they're saying, oh, but look, all these people are gay and it's liberal, it's wonderful. Both sides are, completely just morally corrupt at this point. That's my take on it.
I do question how many people have all that much knowledge these days of the Greek myths and what have you, because I don't think that stuff is really heavily taught in schools these days. I mean, you two are younger than I am, so you would have a better idea of this. But I doubt that it's very heavily taught in schools these days. So I do get your point about that, AI. But like I said, I didn't see the necessity for the trannies doing the Last Supper and this kind of stuff. I really didn't.
I mean, I think like most people, I become sort of immune to like the whole tranny stuff. I mean, I had a feel, I knew that there would be, some, gayification of it. I mean, let's be honest, and there'd be a lot of degeneracy because that's the the flavor of the month with the Western world at the moment. It does put a spanner, sort of a spanner in the works with AA's claim about putting the woke away, though, because this would have been a good point, because it's it's not so much a big event now, the Olympics, not like it used to be anyway.
No,
in previous Olympics, and this would have been a good testing ground to actually do that, but I guess the decision was not to do that, and to sort of carry on. So yeah, I mean, it that does put a spanner in the works for that, because it was, but then again, it's it's something I think I have said that the if this is the end stage of wokeism in culture, as we put it, like the gay stuff in culture, this could be just like one final FU. So that's why they're going all out at the moment, but I don't know.
Could be. Mitch, what's your take on the Tommy Robinson march and the Olympics?
In terms of Tommy Robinson stuff, I mean, there was a guy who was speaking there who himself admitted to being an illegal immigrant from Afghanistan. And he also he literally lied to the HMRC to become a small business owner in this country. But he says all the right things, so all these Tommy Todd Sivnats are all just lapping up what this guy says. And Steve Law's actually got ratioed by a lot of these Tommy Todds for it. So that kind of tells you.
Yeah, I like Steve Laws. I follow Steve Laws on Twitter. He's a good bloke. Yeah.
There was a girl on a girl on Facebook who I'm friends with, like not friends, but friended on, like adjacently know, and she uploaded a video saying, there's a white nationalist rally going on in London, because she lives in London, and it was basically just like a time about like, this is white nationalism, this is literally how how Mosley and everything operated. And I thought to myself, I was like, put a comment there saying, God, we would be so lucky. We would be so lucky if it wasn't near to that.
Yeah. Sorry, Mitch, carry on, mate.
Yeah, so Steve Laws pretty much got ratioed for saying he would deport that illegal immigrant called Harman Singh Kapoor. So it's funny how he's a Sikh from Afghanistan, and there's like 98 of them, like just like a double digit number of them out there, and this guy just so happens to be one of them, and it just so happens to be an illegal immigrant who owns a small business. He actually lied to the authorities of HMRC and whatnot in order to get that small business permit and whatnot. And then he says all the right platitudes to get into the wider civic nationalist movement. and he's going to speak of all. It's basically the same as a Zia Youssef fella in Reform. Like it's just. I mean, in terms of Olympics, I mean, I don't know what I find more offensive: the opening ceremony itself, or just a lot of these Americans, like that Chernovich or Cernovich, whatever his name is, and that Cassandra McDonald, literally just posting this Reddit tier. Yeah, this Reddit tier anti-French crap, basically, like, oh, you know, France is the worst, or France is a source of degeneracy, blah blah blah. And I'm just sort of thinking, it's funny the Americans are trying to say this, because I'm sort of thinking, well, first of all, France legit bankrupted itself to help the Americans in their war of independence. So much for that loyalty. And secondly,
true.
And secondly, it's not the French who are giving us global homo. It's mainly centered around America. Like, it's not the French who are the top dog, giving everyone global homo. Like, they've done their own part in contributing to it, as have we done, and the Americans and the Germans. I'd say, like, or you could even argue to some extent, like the Russians as well, given their experience of communism. But like, even so,
yeah, I mean,
like, it's just.
The thing about France is, I mean, the French voted for a right-wing government, but through the machinations of their so-called democratic political system, the left ended up with more seats than Front National did. So, you know,
Yeah.
So I don't tend to understand the French electoral system.
Yeah, it's like you get, and I've had to argue with like these Canadians and these Americans who are just like coping hard about France, going, oh, well, the French voted for us, and I'm thinking, wait, so the biggest party in terms of vote share in these last elections was Le Pen's party, who got 37% of the vote, but they only got 25% of the seats because the system was gained by the likes of the left and the centre against them. So they didn't have a fair crack of a whip at all. Had they done so, then we would have gotten a proportional amount of seats, or perhaps slightly even more. They'd be the biggest party in Parliament, and I mean, even still, they probably would have had a cordon sanitaire put against them, so probably would still be fortified, like the AfD in Germany, where is it? Yeah, AA is the one who brings up the idea of a kayfabe. Well, in Germany, the kayfabe is pretty much broken up. It's CDU party, like Angela Merkel's party, have worked historically with the SPD, the left-wing parties, the Greens, pretty much everyone else other than AfD to lock them out in states like Thuringen. So
yeah,
what? I mean, carry on, AI. Carry on, AI.
Sorry, I was going to say, and also, Mitch does raise a point. That's true, because in that scenario, the Christian Democrats did side with the left and the Greens and everything, and also it happened in Hungary at the last election, where you had the supposed centre-right liberals and the left-wing party united in one grand coalition party to oppose Viktor Orban and the Nationalist Party to the right of him. So, the centre-right always will collapse to support the left-wing communists in every scenario.
I could well see, AI, that if Farage did well at the next general election, I could well see the rump of the Conservative Party cooperating with Labour and the Lib Dems and the Greens to try and keep him out of power. Well see it.
I mean, the Conservatives have even said during, I remember at the start of COVID, just before lockdowns, you had Conservative politicians saying that if it was that they would be welcoming of a national government of unity. So effectively, the Labour, Conservative, and I presume Liberals or what have you will all unite in one grand party. So yeah, I think that's very plausible.
The one advantage of the British system, the first past the post system, the one advantage of that is if Farage did well enough, that wouldn't work. That's the one advantage of the British system.
The problem is in the proportional representation system, though, like in France, that's what happened, because even though Le Pen got the largest share of the vote, what happened was in the second round, as we as pointed out, all the other establishment parties, including the centre right, just sided with the communists.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened in France. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is. But it's not fair to say that that's what the French people voted for, because, as Mitch pointed out, they didn't vote for that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at, I mean, the argument being made in this country. I mean, Labour have a super majority, but you're not like the people en masse voted Labour. I mean, what did they get? 30, what was it, 38, 37% of the vote? Labour, Keir Starmer.
Yeah, it was quite low. It was quite low, and the actual, like, it was under 10 million votes altogether in the whole country, under 10 million votes, and they got a landslide because most people, so many people, just didn't vote at all.
I mean, and this is another thing is, someone, I think someone in chat just said, Le Pen is just French Tommy Robinson, though, and there is element in truth that, because Le Pen is, of course, big on Israel, and a lot of the Geert Wilders as well. And I do have to wonder, like these people who sort of LARP as nationalists, maybe Civnats, but their whole aura is basically, well, we're sort of nationalists. There is a point, though, because it's been since 2015, it's nearly been 10 years. Not much has been achieved, and there will have to come a point that their backers will have to, they can't keep them in limbo like this forever. Either they have to win or not, not. And one thing that I would say about the AFD is, while and you probably can find on, I've been doing been interesting with the AFD, because I've been trying to find it, like Geert Wilders, if any of their people, leadership or anything, if they have the close ties to to Israel and stuff. I can't actually find anything. There is quite interesting. There isn't much in the way of literature or anything that, apart from a few odd posts, Jews for the AFD or something like that. But there isn't anything particularly noticeable pushed by the party itself to suggest that they have, like Le Pen or Geert Wilders, for example, which makes me think that the AFD actually isn't in the remit control of that sort of lobby.
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. Look, I'll be quite honest with you. At this stage of where we are, with the overwhelming issue of mass verbal immigration, which has to be stopped, or all of our countries pretty much are going to be destroyed, and that is getting closer and closer. With that, at the moment, I really would put up with someone who made nice noises about Israel, providing they did something about mass immigration. I really would. If they don't do something about mass immigration, then there's no damn point to them. But that's the number one issue to me, anyway.
But I think that is a salient point, because that is probably what most Europeans, in France and Germany and so on, are thinking, because it's all well having these figures, but if they're not going to deliver, or if nothing's going to happen for it, because this is where the kayfabe, this is where we get back to kayfabe. If kayfabe is real, then there has to be a turn. There has to be, the people who were considered heels have to have a redemption turn in that scenario. And Le Pen, this was meant to be the one where Le Pen was, either her party would win or get to be the largest party at least. And so this is where Mitch comes back to the kayfabe is getting broken left, right, and centre. There is the other situation that this is rival. You have the Israeli lobby, and then you have the sort of technocrat faction in the elite, and that this is an internal power struggle. which could be the case. We've seen it with in many ways. We're actually seeing it at the moment with Blair and McSweeney in the UK. McSweeney being like the new advisor for Starmer in his campaign. There's Sue Gray in the old civil service Foreign Office network between him and Blair. So there is these internal, I guess you could say, differences do play out in in the wider scope. So I do, yeah.
I mean, one thing I would say is I'd question how much Israeli type Zionists or Israeli supporting Zionists. I question if they're the sort of small hat people who are mostly interested in mass third-world immigration into Western nations.
I mean, I've noted today.
I'm sure some of them are. I'm sure some of them are, but whether the majority are, I'm not so sure.
I've noted at the Tommy Robinson protest today, a lot of the organized the people on the stand up to racism protests are definitely what I would describe as liberal, what they would be liberal secular Jews or Jewish people of heritage. The Zionist ones, however, their main concern is obviously the threat of Islam. For them, that for me, I think that they are deep within the counter jihad movement.
Yeah.
The problem is, though, if you look at Western culture, right, and what makes up Western culture, both groups one, as we know, has attacked it on the civilizational cultural level, deconstructing race and all that sort of stuff, and then the other does it on the maybe on a religious level, because they denigrate the religious aspect or the political aspect. And this comes down. This isn't just this comes down to straight way tribes behave. We look at the Manchester incident as well. That is just pure, what you would describe as pure Smithian tribalism. Between my group is right, that group is wrong, and this is what it just comes down to. It just comes down to groups, right? And so I think that also plays a lot into it. But the thing though is, going back to Tommy Robinson and the counter jihad, while Islamism is a problem in the West, it's a symptom. It's not actually the root cause of the problem. The large root cause of the problem is that the fact is that there is an elite which has propagandized the generations since the end of the war to hate or dislike or corrupt the foundations of Western civilization, and that's something that until others come to accept it, no matter how many movements they do on the streets or makes them feel good, or how many tweets about the revolution is happening, because it isn't. It's just a waste of time, and all you're doing is you're just letting off some steam, and also inviting a few friends along who've also suffered from Islam, Islamism. I mean, that's what it is, because that's what the Zionists, and that's what the Iranian monarchy restoration crowd that we also see turn up. It's just all it is. It's people affected by Islamic takeover. And then I hate, and to not put a fine point on it, those people were losers. They lost their countries to Islamism. They became out of touch with their own people, and they allowed a organized elite to take over their country and force them out. And they were out of touch with their own people. How the hell do we expect them to convince and influence the wider British people or the wider people of the West when they were so out of touch with their own people?
Okay, Mitch, what's your thoughts on that, mate?
I don't really see I mean, Sargon is he's. I say he blocked me earlier because I called him the UKIP rape joke man, because he just can't. Because it's funny how he apologised for that, And you know what he's doing that for? He's doing it because he wants to worm his way into reform. But Farage won't let him for good reason, because, of course, I mean, Batty got screwed over having to cover arse for that guy. I mean, you got Sargon.
It was a childish schoolboy joke. It was a childish schoolboy joke. You know, I mean, I wouldn't myself touch that woman with a 10 steel tip barge pole, but I wouldn't make that joke.
Yeah, it's like but the thing is, he made it when he was in his 30s, because he's like twice my age. I think like he's like in his mid 40s, or something like that. So he was in his 30s at the time he made that joke, and I'm sort of thinking, well, yeah, he shouldn't have made that joke. And it's also, well, he said sorry to that Stephen Edgington for GB News, and you know, and we all know what he's doing. As I said, like, he's doing it because he wants to enter mainstream politics. But the thing is, it's never going to happen. Like, no party will ever have him. So that's what. So, and the fact that he blocked me for calling him, you get raped.
Yeah, I was saying to the people before you joined us, Mitch, that he blocked you on Twitter, which I was very disappointed with. I think that's a bit of a cowardly move on the part of Sargon of Akkad. You know, it really is.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So
broadly, he should know better than publicly supporting this demonstration. As I said, I have not got anything against the vast majority of the ordinary people who went. I think most of those people, their heart's in the right place, even if they're not going about it the right way. But Cole Benjamin knows better than that. You know, he does.
The thing is, you think in the patriotic movement, everyone would be a free-thinking individual, at least have some sense of a brain cell, but you realise, even within the overall patriotic movement, so many people are just complete NPCs. They'll just go for whoever has the best vibe, whoever has the best aesthetic, whoever has the best public recognition. So we all flock towards Tommy because, well, in terms of Homeland Party, well, who is there? Like, I mean, Homeland Party's doing good work, but there's not a personality.
They don't have a personality leading them at the moment. No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Mitch.
And
I mean, one of the things I noticed was they had like the black lady singing and all this stuff at the Tommy Robinson thing. And on Twitter, I saw people posting this and pictures of these two black women and saying, "Oh, look at the horrible right-wing racists," which is just total liberalism, you know. It's like, and people were saying, "Oh, well, they're kind of copying Trump in America." Okay, but you know, this goes back to a discussion we were having last week on the Discord. Blacks have been in America, and Hispanics have been in America since it started. Yeah, since America became a country in 1783 or whatever it was. Yeah, and before that, there were some blacks in the country, and there were Hispanics in parts of the country because, you know, a lot of what is now the United States started off as Mexico. And this is not the same as the situation in Britain. In Britain, there were virtually no black and brown people, despite what the bias brainwashing corporation tries to brainwash kids into believing. There were almost no black or brown people in Britain prior to about 1948. And there were many up until about 1970. So the situation of these immigrants in Britain is not the same as American blacks or American Hispanics. It's not the same at all. They're much, much more recent people who came in.
Yeah, it's not even that. I mean, you got America where, I mean, they had problems already. I mean, it's like, because people think of a Martin Luther King style rhetoric, and it's like, the thing is, and this was before the days of the internet, so it would easily memory hold. Every time there was a civil rights rally, they'd be rioting after, which is why they would actually be papers doing cartoons, and you got Martin Luther King speaking to a newspaper, but in the background, his supporters are all rioting because yeah, like just as we had to deal with, we have to deal with Hare Hill's gypsies who, I don't know if you heard, they gave the children back to the gypsies who were abusing them to begin with, so it's just throwing the towel on that particular instance. And then you've got the blacks in America who they'll riot, they do so with complete impunity, especially in the height of 2020 with fiery but mostly peaceful protests. And yeah, America's got so many problems in regards to these racial demographics. Like, it's not going to behave very well. So the fact that you want to emulate that, if you were Tommy, yeah, I mean, there's a reason why that guy is a complete druggie. So,
look,
yeah, and also like
leaving aside Tommy Robinson's Zionist links, which are more than proven now, you know, with what's his name, that Canadian dude, and the
Ezra Levant.
Ezra Levant, exactly, yeah. But his links with him are more than clear now. And that guy is definitely a shill for Zionism, but aside from his religion, you know. And aside from that, there's also quite a lot of, shall we say, unpleasant drugs and what have you stories floating around Tommy Robinson as well. But you know, I'm prepared to say that most of the people on that march probably don't know about that. You know, and you know, someone in the chat is saying their hearts might be good, but they're soft in the head. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as Mish himself was saying earlier, there's an awful lot of NPCs out there, even people who are broadly on our side. There's quite a lot of them.
Yeah,
you were trying to say something, mate.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, back as Mitch said about, you know, Martin Luther King and that sort of period of, in the late 60s, you know, the political reaction from that was that people voted for Nixon in large numbers, because of the political violence going on, not just with, you know, you had your black nationalists, you had communist urban guerrillas. There's a stream by Rad Lib, a very good stream actually, looking at communist terrorism and black terrorism in America at this time. But because but back then, of course, America was a lot whiter and it was less. I was going to say less ideologically partisan like it is today. And today, because it's, you know, it's more, you know, it's more black and browner, and you have these party machines in a lot of these, you know, different states, it's making it increasingly difficult for, you know, I guess you could say like the Republicans to win, and or anything win. And also, you know, looking at the Republican Party itself, we have to remember that Pat Buchanan and the Paleocons, who were probably the best out of the bunch, were, you know, thrown. Well, were basically sidelined and thrown out, and you know, Trump has never been that. And I think the problem is, I know, you know, like Nick Fuentes and a lot of people on the right have sort of turned on him. I think a lot of people on the right projected their own values onto Trump, because Trump, let's be honest, was
really on the right. I'm not sure.
Well,
is he really on the right with his black rappers and his catboy boyfriends, and I'm not sure if he's really on the right at all, to be honest.
He claims to be what, American, like, nativist, or America First, or whatever he calls himself. And I mean, on the sentiment that I never, you know, I agree, you know, America First, that's fair enough. Nativist movement, there's been plenty of nativist movements in America. But you know, at the end of the day, the MAGA movement is incredibly liberal. It isn't the same. The rhetoric isn't the same as 2016. I think a lot of people have noticed that. I've noticed it as well. It's, you know, it's very different. I think. I mean, I don't know who's going to win. I think. So far, I think Trump will win come November.
Depends how fortified the election is, shall we say?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it'd be foolish if they let Kamala Harris to win, but then again, given what we've seen in France and elsewhere, I don't know at this point. They may allow that to win.
I mean, look, Trump is basically a 90s Democrat, all right? That's really what he is. He's a 90s Democrat. But, and this is where I believe, where I agree with some of our American friends, for example, the dudes who are in the Old Glory Club, etc. He's the only game in town at the moment. He is.
I reckon Trump might actually
if you're on the right, sorry, Mitch, I'll ask you in a sec what you think about this. Don't worry, I'll give you a chance. But I just think that, you know, if you're on the right and you're an American, who the hell else are you going to vote for but Trump's lot at the moment? You have to vote for Trump. Do you want Kamala Harris? And whoever controls her? I
mean, what's the point of voting for Trump? Because, I mean, earlier this year, he was supporting
because
the
he
idea
might
of giving...
do something. If he does what he says, okay, and I'm not suggesting he's going to do everything he says, but he might do something.
Well, like he did last time.
Well, all right. Don't forget, he got totally stymied by the civil service last time.
He had the Senate and the House of Representatives in the first 2 years. He could have done brilliantly, including
but he got
his birthright citizenship. So he's got no excuse for his betrayal.
I think he got totally stymied by the permanent employees of the state. But you know, if he does some of the things he says, if he does something about bringing the Ukraine war to an end, if he does something about closing the southern border, you know, even if he just does those two things, and then there's other stuff, like he's very anti the green agenda. You know, he didn't say drill for nothing. You know, if he does that, if he goes against the green agenda, all of that is a big advantage and a pushback, which will not happen if Kamala Harris wins.
This is basically the same as in Sticks, X and Hammer was saying, oh, well, Trump cut taxes and stuff. I'm thinking, well, the guy nowadays, early this year, he was supporting the idea of giving green cards to foreign students for the IT sector. And I'm thinking, so you got JD Vance with his Indian wife. He's probably going to shill the whole H-1B visa program for Indians even harder.
Very anti the war in Ukraine, JD Vance, by the way, mate.
That guy's a complete rat, so I don't trust anything that guy says.
Well, the left hate him, which I think is always a good sign.
You know, I'm not going to define myself by what my enemies think, Duke. I don't think we should define ourselves by what our enemies think. But that's
all right. Fair enough,
Duke, I would say the reason why the left hate him is because he's very strong on his Christian credentials, his Catholic credentials. They hate him because the left is so atheistic and hostile to Christianity in America at the moment that it's I don't think they hate him because of Ukraine. I'll put it like that.
No. But I don't. But basically, he's very anti the war in Ukraine. He wants it finished, and the only way the war in Ukraine is going to finish is to Russia's advantage, basically. Whatever happens, whether Trump can do some sort of a deal with Putin, or whether the Russians just win militarily, they're the only two options, basically. Because
I think he'll come to a deal.
War. This is plain. We've been saying this on this channel for a long time now. So, you know, but if he does stop that war, that's a good thing. Trump, generally speaking, is not in favor of foreign adventures. He never has been. He's in favor of bringing industry back into America, which, all right, for us Brits, and what have you in the old Commonwealth, that's not particularly a big deal, but it is for Americans. As I say, he's very anti the green agenda. That to me is a big plus for him. And I think this time, at least, he actually will do something about southern border. Apart from anything else, he could hardly do worse than Biden and Harris.
Yeah, that's not really a high bar.
I mean, that's just me. Because I'm someone who will support Farage, not because I think Farage is perfect, but because he's the best bloke we have at the moment who stands any chance whatsoever of getting power. And if you don't have power, you cannot do anything. You can only moan in the background, as we've been doing on this channel for a very long time.
Okay, so for example, in the first 2 years, right, Trump was going on about birthright citizenship. We're going to get rid of it. And I go, you have the Senate and the House of Representatives in your favor. He could have done it at any given time, at any given At any given time he so desired, he could have just gotten rid of it, but no, he just kept tweeting, monitoring the situation. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, and he never did. Law and order, he keeps tweeting it, and I'm thinking, yep, sorry, I turn off from that because I go, look, you're just tweeting and being a big blabbermouth. Meanwhile, you don't do anything. Like you just, oh yeah, cut your taxes, but I'm thinking, what good cutting your taxes when your country's going to the bloody dogs?
So, what would you do if you were an American, Mitch? Who would you vote for?
I won't bother.
You wouldn't bother
stepping. No, I won't bother.
So you'd be quite happy for Kamala Harris to get in by default.
It makes no difference. Like both of them are going to stab you in the back anyway. So what's the point?
I don't agree with that, mate. I take you. You're fully entitled to your opinion, but I just don't agree with you. I think if Kamala Harris wins, that will be a disaster for the US.
And it's a disaster if Trump gets it because he neuters the right. Like you've left to get energized because now they think, oh, the fascists are back in town. Meanwhile, Trump, he makes it right. He gives them a. I have to hate to say the use of the American word here, but I have to use the word pacifier. Like, pretty much gives like an American right a dummy for thinking, he's actually doing something. And I go, no, he isn't. Like, he doesn't really do anything.
Mitch, what do you think is going to happen to change things if Kamala Harris wins? Because there's not going to be a revolution. And what makes you think
things will change with Trump around? Like, we didn't last time, did we?
Mate, at the moment, he's the only game in town. And what I'm hoping is, and I don't know this, but I'm hoping he's learned a bit from his first term of office, and that he will actually be more effective.
I don't think he's learned at all, personally.
Well, I mean, I guess time will tell.
I say, just to take a step back, because I mean, Duke Valentino says, "How can you still have faith in Trump?" He's referring to me when you bought vaccines. I don't think in this particular show I've actually stated I have faith in Trump. I like to know when I did say that, because I don't remember saying that at all. I don't have faith in the Republican Party or, particularly the MAGA movement. But what I will say is, if Trump was sensible, because this is what the Democrats do when they're in power, they reward their voter base, the blacks and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They chuck money at those communities. If Trump was sensible, he would do that to his supporters in white America, if he was sensible. Whether or not, I remember, I think it was someone at the Old Glory Club said, I think it was Pete Quinones actually, who said about setting up, because in America they have all these like funds and these things that support minority groups, the blacks and Hispanics and all these other groups, and they tried to set up one for white Americans, white Americans for, I think it was like college related or something. And he completely, not stonewalled by on a like legal level. It was just on a small local administration level. It revealed that it wasn't possible. And so that's basically what I would come down to. If he was sensible, and maybe he would, that's what the Republican Party would do. And then again, when AA was on Jacob Rees-Mogg's show, same thing with the Conservatives in this country. They could probably have saved many of their seats if they rewarded their friends, the people who vote for them. Because when Labour in power, they reward their friends, they reward their voter base. Okay, maybe they don't give them much, but they give them money, they give them things. The Conservatives, instead, they reward their enemies by giving them senior appointments in the civil service and advisory roles, and then they punish their own voters. And that's, number one, that this is as old as the Roman Senate itself, the various factions, or even the Byzantine court between the Greens and the Blues. It's just basic friend enemy. It's it's old as time itself. So that's my take on it. If Kamala Harris was to win, all she would do is just reward the voter base. If Trump was to win, if he was sensible, he would reward his own voter base. But I don't know if he'd be. I don't know if he would even be allowed.
We've got a load of I see we've got a load of never Trumpers in the chat. Look, although they're not never Trumpers, I presume, from that part of the spectrum. But look, I'm sorry, but I'm not an accelerationist because I don't think it's going to work. You know, if you're going to look at accelerationism, it ain't going to do you any good. It probably won't do your kids any good. It might, maybe, do your grandkids some good. And that's if you're a young bloke. Not if you're me. If you're me, you won't even see it, mate. Because I'm probably the oldest person here.
Okay, and
acceleration
good for Trump.
just will not work unless.
America?
Sorry, Mitch, I'll let you come in a minute, mate. That acceleration thing, in my humble opinion, will not work unless there is a major war. And that's going to leave millions dead if it goes nuclear. Right? And really, we'll have bigger problems, you know? Because that will be civilization ending, as far as I'm concerned, if we get in a major nuclear war. That is the only way that accelerationism story is going to work. Otherwise, you're talking about decades and decades and decades and decades in the future. And also, I'm not one of these.
I think we're going to suffer anyway.
I'm quite bored with
we're going to suffer
people
anyway
at the moment.
So I'm resigned to that personally.
Sorry, what were you saying, Mitch? As I said, I was going to ask you for your views afterwards. What were you saying?
I was just saying we're going to go through pain and suffer anyway. I'd sooner have it just happen now when I'm young rather than.
But it's not going to happen now, Mitch.
Future,
that's the trouble. It's not. What you're going to get is it's just going to get incrementally a little bit worse year after year after year. There's not going to be a sudden collapse. Not going to happen. People who think it is are wrong.
Right, I think in the next few years we're going to get blackouts in this country because we've shut down North Sea.
Quite possibly, if we go the green route, yes, that is quite possible.
So don't you think that's going to radicalise and all? Like, don't you? Because that's the thing. Like, we can do all the theorising. I can talk my bollocks off on stream all I want, but the fact is, it's not going to change much. What will change things, however, is if law and order completely collapses, and if living standards completely go through a sink. But that's what wakes people up. I mean, look at what happened in Germany.
Well, let me just point out what Electoral has. Let me just point out what Electoral has said in the chat here, because I have some experience of this. Because I lived in South Africa for 15 years, up until 2000. South Africa's, Etelline in the chat says, South Africa's been falling apart for decades, and it still isn't in an anarchic collapse state. So how will acceleration happen in the West? And that is quite correct. It is. And South Africa has out of control crime. South Africa has regular blackouts, power outages, because the ANC government is not capable of keeping the power network up to date. South Africa does have roads that are more potholes than roads these days. They have out of control crime. They have farm murders. They have all this stuff going on. And yet there's no revolution. The country carries on. And don't go for the impression that South Africa, especially under the ANC, is anywhere near as well organized as Britain or America is, or Australia for that matter. Because it's not, trust me. And if you haven't had a total collapse there, you're sure not going to get it here. You're just not. It's not going to happen. Not with power blackouts. Not with look at the lockdowns. Look, particularly in Australia, but in Britain it was pretty bad too, and also in some states in the US. But look at the lockdowns. People locked into their homes for months at a time.
Yeah,
people not able to go to the hospital for anything other than the China virus, which was basically a bad flu.
And people accepted it.
Did you see some sort of people standing up and being radicalized? Only a handful.
Nope, because people accepted it. Because people are complete NPCs, like they will just accept it. Because this is why I don't really back the idea of talking about the COVID stuff in our movement, because I just think people don't like being reminded they collaborated. It's like having a bollock of Germans in 1950s for what they did in the 1930s with the mustache man.
Exactly. But that's my point, Mitch. If we just get some power cuts, and I'm sure you're absolutely right, if we go down this net zero nonsense green agenda, we will end up having power cuts for sure. But that's not going to radicalize.
No.
Things are
I
getting
think
gradually incrementally worse year after year after year for decades. That's all that's going to happen.
Right, but that's
I
kept
would
on
far
rolling.
rather we had a chance of putting someone in power who might stop the mass verbal immigration as a vital
You think
first
Trump's
step
going to stop
for
mass
other
immigration?
things. He might.
If you think Trump's going to stop it,
I don't know about whether he will do anything about legal immigration, but he will. I think he actually will about illegal immigration.
Yeah, illegal immigration is a drop in my bucket. Illegal immigration is still a problem, especially when you take a look at the H-1B visas that screwed over the American IT sector.
Yep.
And Trump's going to level back even more because I mean,
yeah, you're right.
Like with the Conservative Party over here, the Hindus they vote for the centre right. So of course, the centre right they always import loads of Hindus, as opposed to Muslims. But the end result is the same. We still get more replacement. So what's the point of voting the centre right? Especially when you take a look at someone like Trump, who, oh yeah, when he gets power, he doesn't bloody use it, does he? He doesn't bloody use it. Oh
well,
yeah,
he didn't last time. He may this time. Who knows? Maybe.
Well, going off his advisors, nope. I'd sooner take my chances with someone else rather than Trump. If
but there isn't anyone else. That's the point. There isn't anyone else who can get power.
Well, there is someone else. It's Kamala Harris, isn't it? I know she's a vacuous.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, I'd sooner take my chances with her than Trump.
So more of what America has had for the last 4 years. Okay, that'll work.
Okay, and totally, yeah, Trump was such a godsend, wasn't he? He was such an effective political operator in the 4 years he was in power, wasn't he?
I will say this for Trump. He did have the American economy the best it's been for a very long time.
Oh, this is just cope. This is...
Well,
come on, man.
Fair enough.
Like,
I mean,
come on.
We are going to have to agree to
you are... Come on. We're talking about mass migration. That's existential. Oh, yeah, great. GDP line go up. Okay, what about mass migration? Oh, that still went up under Trump.
Let's remember Trump did also stop a lot of Middle Easterners coming into the US. He did also do that.
It was a sector you know how many countries it was, because he was what? It was what, 13 of them, wasn't it? Like, yeah, Libya. Okay, the terrorist hotspot. Fair enough.
But by and large, he did do that, and also he didn't start any new foreign wars.
No, I just missile strikes in Syria instead, literally within months of taking power.
Yeah, he did do a missile strike. I know that, but that's the only thing. And that was the only time using power.
And that was the only time. And that missile strike was the only time CNN actually praised him as being presidential. Funny enough,
yes,
that was the only time they became friendly with him.
Quite right. He did. Yeah. I mean, also the other thing is, let me make it clear. I don't think that AA is right about they're going to put the work away. I really don't. You know, we have already been talking on this stream about all the trannies at the Olympics. So you know, I just don't think that's going to happen.
What do you make about Labour banning the hormone blockers for children?
Well, good. I'll support them in that. Probably nothing else, but I'll support them in that. I've seen a lot of people in the chat talking about the jab. Now, listen, I've never had the jab, never took any of them, and the only time I even got tested for that shit was when I had a triple heart bypass operation a few months ago, and they insisted on doing that, or they wouldn't give me the operation, and I would have been dead. But I never took the jab even then. All I took was 2 tests, which they insisted on giving me. But they're the only 2 tests I have ever had for the China virus. So, you know, I stood up against that stuff more than most people in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say on the position here of putting the woke away, I think in Britain, especially with with Starmer, I would say that McSweeney, who'd been running the campaign, and Sue Gray, have identified that there are elements of the modern liberal world which is isn't productive. I don't think they disagree with it, and they notice it doesn't garner any results. So putting the woke away, it could be that this happens, in Britain. You're not going to see it in other countries. The thing though is putting the woke away. The original sort of theory on that by AA is this is in the preparation. If there's a war, if there is a major conflict between Russia and Iran and the other allies against the West, against the collective West, what you would see is the entire sort of woke sector on all levels, from culture, media, law, politics, office, from the top echelon society to the very low level local, your local business where you have a diversity officer. All of that would go. That's that theory. Now, I think if the regime put their mind to it and they wanted it gone, they could get rid of it. Maybe not overnight, but within a short period of time. But if they're backing away from putting woke elements away, that sort of signals that they no longer think that there's going to be a conflict coming down the road. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to put the woke away. To be honest, I don't think it's going to happen. At this current trajectory, I don't think it's going to happen. And on the topic of people being radicalized and motivated into something, I mean, Mitch is right. The only time the right in Spain, which was largely centre right, were motivated into a reaction was when you had bands of communists going around raping and killing nuns and people in villages. And
they were united by the Catholic Church. Let's remember the right in Spain
and they were
during the Spanish Civil War was very much united by the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and parties. We talk about Homeland Party. I mean, the Phalangists were a very minor party at the time. They weren't. I don't think they even had really any seats on the national level. They were a very small political organisation.
But they had the Carlists and other people like that on their side. Yes.
Yeah, but through the alliances from the Carlists and others, that they actually became a household name in Spain and played a prominent role in the Civil War. So, I do think if you actually had like bands of like Green Party and Labour Party supporters going around the country murdering people in the shires, I think that would have to trigger a response of some sort. I do think if that happened on a mass scale, that would trigger a response. Yes.
But how do they get? All right, given we believe in elite theory, which I presume we do for the most part.
Yeah.
Then no mass populist movement, even if it's the result of a collapse, is going to do any good.
No, well that's the point, Andrew, because the point is you would have okay, let's take the Homeland Party. So let's use that example I used. Let's say the Homeland Party organized where they had party officers in, say, a local police force, say like in Dorset, for example, or Hampshire, and then they had a town councillor, and they had like a judge who was friendly. And so when the collapse happens, they could just call on that party connection or that local connection, and then suddenly Dorset is not part of the People's Republic of some like socialist workers London Assembly. They're actually like a rival car. That's just one example.
So you're saying localism. You're saying localism, AI.
Yeah. Rival elites are built largely on localism, and this is the problem when you centralize power. And going to the American Revolution, the Sons of Liberty, they largely focused their movement. Their members were largely focused in places like Philadelphia, Boston, New York. It was the northern colonies. In the South, they didn't have, apart from like Charlestown and places down there, they didn't have like a larger following down there. But it was over time when they were able to assert power, and this is the thing, this is the crux of elite theory, Iron Duke, when that rival elite is able to assert power, and it goes to the point which Mitch made, people orient themselves to power. The reason why people complied with the mask mandates and a lot of the vaccines is because it was power. People aren't radicals. People are not naturally radicals. They're not
That's obvious enough.
And so, and and this is the thing. If there was, let's just say, our dream, the genuine like Homeland Party right-wing revolution in this country, which swept them all out, you would have millions of people who previously would have called people like us disgusting, racist, bigots, you name it. They would be our biggest defenders and supporters. And that's just how power functions, because people orient towards power.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just it.
But Britain, for example, right, is one of the most centralized countries in the world, despite what Blair did with the fake nationalism in Scotland and Wales, which isn't really pro-Scottish and pro-Welsh at all, of course. But despite that, Britain is probably the most centralized country in Europe in many respects.
Yes.
If a local council in Britain does something that the government doesn't like, the minister responsible can just change it. They just can. The only way you're going to get change in Britain. Sorry, mate, let me finish. The only way you're going to get change in Britain is if you get power in the central government. You've got to get it in the central government. Yes, it can help if you've got allies and friends in local politics and as you say, judges and cops and all the rest of it. Although that's going to be very difficult with the amount of time the regime puts into making sure that the cops are absolutely on their side. We were talking about the military last week, and the military, trust me, is not as bad in that as the cops are. Nowhere near. But someone said, where did the Rhodesians go in the chat? And I can tell you where most of the Rhodesians went who left Rhodesia, the white Rhodesians. Most of them went to South Africa. We used to call them Wenwees in South Africa because they began so many conversations with when we were in Rhodesia. Nice people, very nice people. But yeah, most of them went to South Africa initially anyway. These days, of course, there's nowhere for the white people in South Africa to go.
I mean, I would say on the topic of centralization there, I mean, look at the state of what a lot of the Pakistani Muslims have done to various northern towns, particularly in Yorkshire. I mean, they have created effectively in some areas like rival little rival states.
To do that. And they're allowed to do that by the cops and the local authorities. They're allowed to do it.
Well,
if white people tried to do that, they would not be allowed to do it.
Hold on, Andrew. The reason they're allowed to do it is because they are well more organized than any native has been, because because when there has been an attempt by the natives to organize, it's last real attempt was with the BNP, and we all know what happened there. But the reason why they're able to do that is they are organized, and because through their organization, like we've seen this week,
and they're a protected group.
The Manchester, yeah, hold on, stop. The reason they're protected, the reason why they have that status, is because they are able to use the threat of violence, and that's why Labour and that's why the establishment has given them these rights and protection, because they understand that people are afraid of the fear of their of their mass organization and threat of violence. That's why they're given so much leeway, because they understand the threat of violence.
So you don't think it's because they're a protected group?
No, they are a protected group because of the threat of violence. They are a protected group because of the threat of violence, and they know that they can communicate with other Islamist organizations in the Middle East who do take violence to the extreme level. That's why Labour back in the day gave them so many protective, so much privileges. And also there's the other element, as I stated before, they would vote Labour, and so Labour would, on the local level, Labour would reward them as well. I do think, though,
Although now, of
think
course, they're
Iron
starting
Duke,
not to vote Labour and starting to vote
yeah,
for their own
that's my
religious
point.
party.
That's my point.
I was going to say, they're now starting to vote for their own parties and not Labour.
Yes, yes, but that is why I think Keir Starmer, I think something might be done, because there is a point that they've reached where they've given up on Labour. They are willing to they're willing to do all this even after the kicking head and everything, or with that Manchester video that was going around the other day. And this is a problem for Labour. This is a problem for Keir Starmer. And I do think something. I think something might be done about this.
Believe it when I see it.
It has to be
believe it when I see it. I will believe it when I see it. There was much more fuss made last week about those morons in the Manchester airport, the Islamist morons in the Manchester airport, who were they busted the noses of female police people who shouldn't have been there in the first place, in my opinion. But there you go. Women can't do that job. But there was much more fuss made about the white cop who actually took decisive action, which he needed to do because these were armed police and they could have lost their guns, and you could have had a lot of people shot. So I'm entirely in favour of that policeman who took decisive action and subdued the bloke. But there was far more fuss made about this cop doing that violently, which he had to do, in my opinion, than there was about the British Army officer who was frenziedly stabbed just outside his barracks. No one said a word about that because the Muslims are a protected group, as I keep saying.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get back, and I don't think you're understanding, Iron Duke, is the reason they're a protected group is because they turn up in front of police stations, they turn up in front of people's homes, and use the threat of violence. And it's
so
same with.
Are you suggesting? We've got to be very careful how we phrase this because it's YouTube and it's not a free speech place. But are you suggesting if indigenous British people were more of a violent threat, that they would get better treatment? Because I don't believe that, to be honest. I really don't.
Iron Duke, what I'm suggesting is that the British government caved in to the IRA.
Sure.
With the Northern Ireland Good Friday Agreement. They caved in. And what that has shown is that in Britain, political violence works because the government will cave in. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anyone should do anything or anything. I disavow.
No, good, because we can't do that on this channel, and we do not support violence on this channel, YouTube, not at all.
No, I don't support violence. But what I'm saying is, when you have a British government that gives in to radicals who commit violence, then that is where we're at the moment.
I've also got to say that
that's true.
The Northern Ireland peace agreement also had a great deal to do with that American President Clinton and the pressure he was putting on the British government. And also because Tony Blair is a traitor and always has been. But yeah, we've got to say those things.
I mean, looking at the state of Northern Ireland and looking at the Good Friday Agreement, I would say the nationalist community, the IRA supporting community, got more out of it than the Unionists did.
Of course they did, yeah, by a long way. Yeah, it wasn't a total surrender. It wasn't a total surrender, but it was about 75%. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it might. I mean, and a lot, and that's why a lot of Unionists, are, they're well. As I say, I can't really comment further on it because I don't want to get you.
No, exactly. I know what you're saying. It's a difficult subject to talk about. But yeah, I agree with you broadly that the British government did cave in, although I think they caved in more to the Americans than anything else. So I'm going along with Mitch on this one, but yeah, it's but the Muslims and immigrants generally in Britain are a protected group and are always
Well, yeah, they're a
kid
protected
gloves.
group.
There were far.
Yeah,
I mean, even this bloody silly Tommy Robinson thing we spent some time talking about earlier. There were far more cops at that than there would have been if it had been a Muslim or a black demonstration. And also, they did far more arrests than they would if it had been a black or a Muslim demonstration. You know, we've got to be honest. This is a protected group. They're not treated the same. We have two-tier policing in Britain, and if you're an Anglo-Celtic Briton, you are treated worse than if you're an immigrant. 9 times out of 10.
I mean, the only thing I will say is, as I go back to it, you know, we need to have the same in-group preference zeal that these other groups have. I mean, that's where
absolutely. Totally agree,
you know.
mate. Totally agree. Totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. You're 100% right about that. That's going to be difficult to do because the most altruistic of all groups are white people, basically. You know, sadly.
Yeah. I mean, while there, I think, while there is, you know, a group like that, you know, whether that manifests itself in the Reform Party or some sort of group, as long as it exists, that's sorry, not Reform, Homeland Party, or as long as that exists, that keeps the spirit alive, even if it is only like,
look,
you know, 50
I am
people.
all in favour of the Homeland Pie picking up support, getting local councillors and what have you all over the place, and hopefully eventually even some MPs. All in favour of doing that. What their problem is going to be, in my opinion, apart from the fact they're going to be even more demonised than Farage by the mainstream media, is that they need a personality to lead them, and they just don't have one at the moment. Because even in Britain today, even though we have this parliamentary system, you've got to have a personality leading your party. I mean, all right, you don't have to be a great personality. I mean, look at bloody Keir Starmer, you know. He has he has all the personality of an old shoe. But you do have to have someone who is nationally recognised, and they don't have anyone at the moment. They may get someone,
Yeah, they don't.
but they haven't got anyone at the moment.
I mean, you need someone. What would be the description? Like the Evolian sort of description of a shaman-like figure, great orator. You know, sort of that sort of figure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just again. I was saying this on our Discord earlier in the week, and I'll ask Mitch to come in a minute and give me his views on this because I know he doesn't totally agree with me. But if you look at right-wing revolutions, now we were talking about the Spanish Civil War. The Spanish Civil War only happened because the communists tried to take over the Spanish government, basically. And as you said, I quite rightly, you know, they were going around raping and murdering nuns and priests and doing all sorts of atrocities, and also lots of ordinary religious people. And where Spain was lucky in the mid 1930s was that it still had a very strong Catholic tradition, and it was only that Catholic tradition which held the right together, really. Plus, of course, they got lots of military aid from Italy and Germany, which counteracted the military aid that the so-called Republicans, who were actually communists, were getting from the Soviet Union. Without that, they wouldn't have won. And if you look at earlier revolutions on the right, they were mostly almost a direct result of World War I and its ending. And in the case of the mid-century Germans, of course, with a big help from the Great Depression. And they're the only ones you can find, really. I mean, all right, Portugal, I suppose.
I mean, in a non-European context, you could look at the Iranian Revolution And again, I don't like to use this one example because
Totally
it's
different people,
non-European,
though,
it's
mate.
different.
Totally different
It's
people,
different
totally
people,
different traditions.
But if you look at the way that society was, you had a liberal, secular or secular in the sense of the way they presented themselves, monarchy government, and then you had a Persian Islamic underclass. And of course, you had communists, you had liberals who were the main driving force at the start, and not the main drive. They had the main leadership, sort of, because at the time, many people thought it would be a communist revolution in Iran, but it was the smaller schools and the network that existed of the and particularly the figure of Ayatollah Khomeini, who, as you said, he was a I think he's up there with mid-century German in like the way that he's able to draw crowds in their country, and he was able with that that network of the clerics to overthrow the Shah and overthrow the Shah regime. And it is important to note that the government, the Shah's government, while it is a tragedy and there was a lot of aspects of high Persian culture and everything that was affected by this, but let's not pretend that the Shah's regime was in any sense competent in governance. There was a large parts of economic and everything else economic issues with what was going on there. And you could say the same with the French, what caused the French Revolution. Same issue with the French Revolution. There was, obviously, was different. Wasn't a conservative revolution.
Well, France was bankrupt after supporting the Americans in the American War of Independence. But that was the main the initial cause of the French Revolution was that.
Yeah,
the country was
but
bankrupt. That was why they had to. That was why they had to call the States General. That's why the king had to do that.
Yeah,
because the place was bankrupt.
With Germany, the party was very lucky that they had a lot of friends, judges, and also in the old military Prussian network as well. There was a lot of friends there, so they had actually like elite within. Funny enough, they actually had elite within the Weimar government.
You're absolutely correct. They did, and also, of course, it wouldn't have happened at all without World War One and the destruction of the Kaiser and the German imperial family. It wouldn't have happened without that. But then, none of the Weimar stuff would have happened without that, and then Germany losing the war and the Treaty of Versailles and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, and then of course on top of that, they had the Great Depression, which was the final nail in the coffin for the Weimar people, because it was the Weimar government, I should say, because it was Germany was more badly affected even than Britain or America was by the Great Depression. And of course, in America, you got the so-called New Deal from FDR, who was not I'm not a fan of FDR. He's not a good guy as far as I'm concerned at all. But that's why that happened. But we're not in that situation now, and we're not in anywhere near that situation now, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, unlike.
I don't think there's going to be this breakdown, and if there is, it's going to be, I don't know, maybe 50 or even more years in the future.
Well, if there is a breakdown,
there's always going to bother me because I'm going to be long dead by then.
Well, even if there was a breakdown, there is that risk that whoever you may think the right might think, oh, we're the most organized, but it could be communists, it could be the Greens, it could be any group which is more organized. And again, the liberals and the communists in Iran were sidelined. The liberals in Russia were sidelined. Certain groups within the French Revolution were sidelined as well.
Although the French Revolution, of course, was basically a leftist revolution.
Yeah,
it gave us our left and right, But
Yeah.
looking at right-wing revolutions as such, they don't tend to happen. I mean, people forget
No,
that even in the case
I mean,
of
you could
the
argue,
Austrian painter, he was voted into power. He was voted into power.
I mean, you could look at the March
when he
on
tried to
Rome,
do a revolution,
the-
when he tried to do a revolution, he failed and ended up in prison.
Yeah. I mean, you could look at the. I don't know. Maybe the Mussolini in Italy. The March on Rome.
Mussolini succeeded, but again, Italy's losses in World War One were awful, and Italy got nothing out of that war. Basically, the Western Allies, Britain and France, went back on many promises that were made to Italy, and Italy really got nothing out of that war at all. And I also think it's also arguable that Mussolini was really right wing. I mean, he did start off as a communist.
Yeah, I would say though, with the March on Rome, of course, the liberals, the socialists, and the communists, and I guess you could say the centre right, the centre right, what was it, the Italian People's Party, or the Christian Democrat Party that was existing there, all joined up together to oppose him. So you could say that's like one of the first breaking of the political kayfabes, going back to our previous point.
Yeah.
But I mean, it. You could look at that as an example, but of course, the March on Rome is, as we know from elite theory, it wasn't as clear as that, because actually, while it's like viewed as a this historic march on Rome where he marched into the capital and basically said, "I'm in charge," we know that's not entirely how it went. It was his black shirts and his team already had seized levers of power, and the March on Rome was just like a ceremonial sort of formality.
And eventually the king gave his blessing to it. The then Italian king gave his blessing to it in the end as well.
Yeah, but what was it, Victor Emmanuel III or something like that?
Yeah, but I mean, again, very different situation to any that a Western nation is in today. Really very, very different situation. I just think that we look at this stuff and we think, oh yeah, well, something could happen and we'll do that. But it sure ain't going to be even Britain having no power for, say, 4 hours every day because of green policy. That's not going to cause a revolution. I guarantee it, mate. It won't.
And even if there was a revolution,
people will moan.
And even if there was even if there was a revolution, I honestly do think people like Carl, Thomas Tomlinson, and all those people, and the Civnats will just get shafted. They would just get shafted.
Hopefully, because I'm no fan of Civnats. I'm not a Civnat, and I'm no fan of it. But who knows? But I really think that we are better off where we are now, supporting those people who are at least more or less on our side, rather than our sworn enemies.
Yeah, I don't.
That's my only point.
I don't buy. I mean, would you trust Trump if he was in a foxhole with you? Because I wouldn't. I wouldn't trust him.
I don't see why not. I will say one thing about Trump. I will say one thing about Trump. He'd just been shot and he didn't cower. And many, many men, including some men I've known in the military, would have. So he's not a coward. I'll say that for him. He's not a coward.
Okay. And
he was half an inch.
There are many cases of people
from having his head turned into pink mist. He was half an inch from having his head turned into pink mist, mate. Okay. And all these people who will try and tell you, it was conned and all the rest of it. You can't con that shot. Not the best sniper in the world. The best sniper rifle could not con that shot. Not possible.
You're preaching to the crowd, we already know. So
I would say Trump's got courage. I would say that.
Okay.
I disagree with Duke Valentine. I disagree with Duke Valentino in chat saying Napoleon was a writer's countess revolution. I don't think Napoleon
No, he
was
was a revolutionary.
not. He was a Jacobin through and through. And even though
Yes, he
when
was.
he just got lucky, he was lucky when Robespierre's regime fell. Luckily, he was outside of Paris. If I think he was in Marseille or Nice or somewhere like that
Yeah.
at the time. And he was arrested because of his Jacobin, because his connections to the
Let's not forget the whiff
Robespierre
of
fair
grape
family.
shot. Anyway. Let's not forget Napoleon and the whiff of grape shot when he got the artillery to fire on the French royalists.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was absolutely a Jacobin. He wasn't a right wing counter revolutionary figure at all, in my opinion. We seem to have lost Mitch, because I was just going to ask Mitch what he thought about Napoleon, but we seem to have lost him. Hopefully he'll come back. But yeah, I like I said, I really, at the moment, you've got to get power to do anything. If you don't get power, all you can do is sit here as we have been doing since these streams started, and this is a number 182 of them weekly. And we can just moan because we have no power. If you don't get power, you can't do anything. That's my point.
I mean,
so at the next general election, I will absolutely vote for Farage, unless somebody in the meantime comes up who I think stands some chance of actually getting MPs. I will vote for Farage's party at the next election. Not because I think he's perfect, because I don't. I don't like the guy who he's put in as the chairman of Reform at all. I don't like Richard Tice at all. And I don't totally agree by any means with Nigel Farage himself. But at the moment, he's the best thing we've got.
I mean, let's not. Okay, if we look at, if we're looking at, our situations, I mean, we're content creators. We talk about various different topics, and then we have the people like Morgoth and AA and others above us who have larger audiences and maybe even arguably greater reaches to people who are in power, who are closer to power than others. And when we have Morgoth on your show, I think it's one of the most viewed ones on your channel. Still, there were a lot of people
Morgoth's
checked
been
it
on
out
here twice. Yes, Morgoth's been on twice actually.
He's been on twice. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I was with, I think, on the first one he was here, and also people like Endeavour. So there is a chance that it depends. What are we? Are we people who will do like Substack articles, similar to what Morgoth and others do, and hope our ideas or stuff that we, and like people like Nathan Hood who keeps mythologies, Anglo and Celtic mythologies alive.
Like Nathan Hood, he's a good guy.
And Apostolic Majesty, who looks at the real history of Britain and how things actually happened from a from a realist lens, not the not sort of like a liberal interpretation of history. Because that's the only power we have is that sort of information. But the thing though is, because of what those people are, what they're into, is that effectively their job is for it to filter into those people who are in power, or who will come potentially to have power in the future. And it is noted that there are people in our circles who have maybe 2 steps separate or 3 steps separate connections to the potential future Vice President JD Vance.
Yep.
I know raw egg nationalists. We've had back and forth messages before. He's commented on my stuff. I know he has connections to Tucker Carlson and stuff. Now, we need to decide like what is our place in this grand scheme of things. I am concerned that a lot of our content, and I don't want it to be solely focused on America, because at the end of the day we can get, you know, I'm pretty certain people at the Old Glory Club and people like that can, you know, fight that battle. I am concerned with what's going on in the UK, because I'm concerned that people leading, you know, the sort of any British patriotic movement is basically surrendered to by Iranian monarchists and Zionists and Tommy Robinson people.
I
That is
set
a
this
problem.
channel up. I set this channel up and the Discord that goes with it on purpose as a British and Old Commonwealth Discord. Right? We have a few good Americans in the Discord, as you know, and I invited them. But mostly the Discord is British people, Australians and Canadians, and I actually don't have any New Zealanders in the Discord at the moment, but I would like to have. And it is deliberately set up for that. But obviously, when you have goings on like Trump being shot and Biden resigning or saying he's not going to run at the next election at the last minute, and there's a US election going on, yeah, of course we're going to have to cover it to some degree, you know, because like it or not, that's going to affect Britain one way or another. But we don't spend most of our time talking about that, and never have. You know, I mean, we talk about.
I'm not talking about like us particularly. I'm just talking about like the online right, the right at the moment in general.
Which happens a lot. Yeah,
yeah,
it happens a lot.
I mean,
and I tell you why it happens. I tell you why it happens, AI. It happens because, and even in the chat we get on this stream, it happens to some degree, but it's in larger channels, like, for example, AA, more than half his audience is probably American. So naturally, he's going to spend quite a lot of time covering America. You know, that's where more than half his audience comes from. So, you know.
Yeah, which is saddening itself, because it's like whereas people in Britain, and you know, I think what Bowden point is, I mean, most people are resigned to watch, just happy to watch X Factor, you know, on Saturday night.
There's some truth to that. There is some truth to that. But you know,
there is some truth.
We can do our best to spread the word. And I mean, one of the things I always say that I want to do with this channel is, like, many of our viewers, and quite a lot of people in the Discord for that matter, I mean, you including yourself, are pretty young blokes, you know. And I do think we have to spread the message to young blokes that, you know, the GAE is not the be all and end all of the world or of Britain. It isn't, you know. That's one of the things I do think that this channel should do, and certainly one of the things I wanted to do is that you need to give hope to your people. This is why I am very anti-black pilling. Not in favour of these people who are black pillars. I'm not, because I don't see where they're getting us. They're not getting us anywhere, really. You know, oh, this bloke is useless. This bloke is useless. Everything is useless. Nothing's going to work. Don't vote. You know, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to go along with that. I'm never going to go along with that. I don't think it's the right thing for us to do. At the moment, we are in a far from perfect situation. But those people who are pushing things in our direction, and I would say Farage is one of those, we should support them, in my humble opinion. You know, Farage, I watched his maiden speech in Parliament the other day. Did you watch that?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
And it was quite good. It was mostly about immigration, and it wasn't all about illegal immigration. It was also about mass legal immigration. Now, no one was talking about that in Parliament until Farage got into Parliament. Nobody.
No. I mean, I have said, I said the only positive thing about Farage being in Parliament is that the Tories previously, after election campaigns, they can slither back into Parliament and never talk about the effects of immigration and what's going on in the country. But today, that makes it impossible now, because that you do have reform representation in Parliament, and Farage in particular, and so that's going to make the Conservatives' life even more difficult. I will say, I'm looking at the leadership election going on with the Conservatives. people like Robert Jenrick and even the more wet types like Tugendhat have all pivot towards the right on social issues, as I had a feeling some of them might, mainly to be doing to outflank the diversity higher women in the crowd, but also because many of them have come to realise that okay, you got the Liberals and doing well, and some of the West Country seats which they lost, but the reality is, the political reality is, the reason they lost is because their voter base went to Reform or didn't turn up.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I would point out about the Reform thing and Farage, because Farage really is Reform for the most part, is that the Reform Party got more under 30s votes, like people under 30 years old. It got more under 30s votes than the Conservatives did. Now, that's got to worry them.
But
that has got to worry them.
Yeah.
So,
and Mitch did. I mean, Mitch does. I mean, there is Reform. The internal battles with Reform is going to be between, Tory light types within Reform. I know that there are strong Tory elements within Reform movement, and they are they'll be making moves and everything, particularly with the new chairman, who sort of paid his way into the party. This Yusuf
I don't like
fella,
that guy at all.
Muslim.
I see Mitch in the chat slagging him off, and I agree. I don't like it, but money talks and bullshit walks, I'm afraid, in politics.
Yeah. So again, the interesting. I mean, the only thing I would ask, because I don't know, I haven't really checked out. Has Farage or Reform actually talked about Israel, like in like the Republican sense, like sort of gone a bit of a spurging out of love and support for Israel?
I don't think been like not as much as Trump has, for example, no, but to some degree, yeah. And you know what? As I said earlier, and this is just my own opinion, I will put up with a politician who does that. Because it takes some of the heat off him, so long as he does something about mass immigration, which to me is the number one issue. Everything else is secondary to that. I mean, yeah, I don't want to see children having their sex changed. I don't want them to be brainwashed by the school system and the education system generally. I don't want those things to happen. I'd like to stop them. But the first and most important thing you have to do in a country like Britain is to stop mass immigration. And I mean legal mass immigration. You have to stop it. And Farage's idea of net zero immigration is not good enough, but it's 1,000,000 times better, literally, than anyone else's policy.
I think well, I mean, in Parliament, yeah. I mean, and it's not saying much, but that's the reality of it. I do think Mitch is right though. If Farage doesn't pivot back to the energy from beforehand and continues on like the Boomer Tice line that people referred to, the Boomer Tice path.
Absolutely.
Reform will just fail. It will just fail. And I mean, I would say if the Homeland Party, if any of their people watching, I know some of them do, if Reform does go along that line, that would be your time to come in, because that would be a good time to start getting a bit of.
I agree with you. If Farage goes off, Farage needs to hammer immigration. He needs to hammer it constantly, all the time. That should be the major thing he talks about all the time. If he doesn't do that, then he will lose my support. If he waters that down, he will lose my support. He hasn't so far. I did say, Mitch, we were talking about this earlier. Yeah, Labour scrap puberty blockers for under 16s. Oh, good. Should be for under 18s at least. But anyway, whatever. But yeah, I'm good, and I support them in doing that. You know, it's probably the only thing I will support the Labour Party doing, but there you go. But yeah, I'm not suggesting for 1 second that Reform and Farage are perfect. They're not. They're nowhere near perfect. But they're the best thing we got at the moment. And we might just as well support them because there's no one else we can support. Now, if the Homeland Party start running MPs, and especially if they get someone who becomes a recognisable national figure, if they do that, then it could well be that I will say to people, yeah, well, I think we should support the Homeland Party now, not Farage. But it hasn't happened yet.
No, I would say Reform. I mean, the Liberal Democrats, the reason why they do so well in parts of the country is they're very good at organising on the local level, localism. Even though they get very small percentages of the vote, they're able to. What they do is they campaign in very specific seats that they have a greater chance of winning, and then they end up winning. And I think one of the problems with Reform is going forward, they will need to focus on very particular seats that they came second in last time, even close second. And it may mean Reform in the short term, like in the next general election, seats where they have no chance of winning, like Liverpool or something like that. And maybe parts of Scotland.
They came second in 100 seats. They came second in 100 seats.
But what I'm saying, hold on. What I'm saying is they need to focus. They need to look at like the results and say, okay, we're not going to win here. We're not going to win here, but we may win in these 100 seats here. Let's just go all out at these ones here and defend. And because otherwise, it's better to get 100 seats than just, let's say, like, you know, gain 1 or 2. You might as well gain, if you're going to go go all out, you might as well get 100 seats. Yeah, and that's what the Liberal. That's what the Liberal Democrats did, because if you look at across the country, a lot of their seats, their vote share went back. They sort of didn't really gain much. They lost or gained a small amount. But then in the targeted ones in the West Country, in the south of England, the southeast, they had these huge gains because they, you know, were present in the local politics there, local governments there.
Totally agree. I think you're totally right. And you know, I watched a good stream that Horace and Steve Laws were on just before the election, and those guys were, who I like, by the way, and I've streamed with Horace quite a few times now on his channel and on my channel, and those guys were saying that, you know, we've got to hold Farage's feet to the fire. We've got to say, look, mate, you've got to keep on this immigration stuff, because that is the issue in Britain, and it's the issue that the public are most woken up to. And yeah, I agree with that. We do need to hold his feet to the fire, and we do need to say to him, no, look, mate, you've actually got to keep going on about this if you want support. Totally agree with that. But you can only vote for a party that's there to vote for. You know? And yeah, I'd like the Homeland Party to get a couple of MPs, but they're not going to get a load of MPs at the next general election. They might get 2, 3, maybe.
I mean, I would say that in the district election that they had before the general election, where they were doing a lot of build-up, they did beat the Labour Party. I do remember they did beat the Labour Party.
Good. And I'll support them totally for that.
I think they came 3rd or 4th, but they did beat the Labour Party. So, you know, and they did, you know, for a new party, they did quite well. I would say they did better than, you know, other like Britain First and all the other sort of other parties.
Yeah. We've got so many of these small parties in Britain. I mean, you know, AI, you've been a regular on this stream for a long time. I've been against all this plethora of little parties all this time, because all they do is take each other's votes. You know, the same people are voting for all these little parties. They've got one thing that Reform do need to do is make some sort of electoral deals with other parties. They did actually have one, I think, with the was it the British Democrats? They did have one deal with those guys. So they didn't run against each other, but that needs to happen more often. you know. But when you're going to have personalities involved, you're always going to get disputes, you know. But yeah, until something better comes along, I will support Farage until something better comes along. But I don't see, you know, yeah, okay, the Homeland Party might be something better. They're going to need a personality, though, who can be recognized around the country and has a bit of charisma.
Yeah.
But if they get that, then I will support them. If they get that. So, you know, that's my thinking on it. Like I said, I'm not in favor of black pilling. You know, and there's no point in voting and all the rest of it. Like, what? Where does that get us? It doesn't cost you anything to vote. You know, I can't remember. It might have been Atman who said that. You know, it doesn't cost you anything to vote, so you might as well vote. You know, for the least worst person, if nothing else. Yeah, Aaron Hook in the chat is saying they had a pact with the SDP, the TUV, and the Independent Unionists. Alex Easton in Northdale. So yeah, so they did have a couple of pacts, but that needs to become, by the time of the next election, that needs to be more widespread, in my opinion. Because these small parties are basically these small right of centre parties. They're all chasing the same votes.
The TUV MP that won in Northern Ireland, which was Ian Paisley Jr.'s seat of North Antrim. I believe he sits with Reform. That there's actually, I think the TUV and Reform are in the works of signing some sort of alliance.
Yeah, that's right. That is correct. Yep, that is correct.
The TUV for someone in the chat is the traditional unionist voice, and they're a splinter from the DUP. So they believe the DUP has somewhat portrayed unionism in recent times, particularly over the Northern Ireland Protocol and the post-Brexit negotiations that were there with because what it's done is it's given the Irish Republic and the EU, particularly the Irish Republic, greater say over economic affairs in Ulster.
And look, the so-called Conservative Party totally betrayed Ulster, because after the Brexit deal, they allowed the EU to continue controlling Northern Ireland's borders, which to me is a total betrayal, basically.
Excuse me. They betrayed.
But yeah, definitely. For anyone in the chat who doesn't know, by the way, Mitch's internet shit the bed, so that's why he's not here, although he is in the chat. All right. Well, we've been going for over 2 hours. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up, AI?
Not particularly. The only thing I would say is, people just to beware of these engagement accounts like Libs of TikTok and others, because there's this thing, and me and Mitch have sort of both been seeing this, particularly Mitch, because he's sort of going where you have these accounts which say, oh, look what's happening in many American accounts are, mind you, who are Libs of TikTok and people like that, who go, oh, look what happened in Europe. Europe is so far gone. Look at this. And it's like there was this one particular clip going around, and it was with Ross Kemp, and it turned out it was from over 10 years ago, and it was filmed in South Africa.
I saw that. I saw that.
And it was about a bunch of black guys talking about like raping somebody or something. I don't know. It was something along those lines, and it was kind of like, you're getting these engagement accounts which are just straight up lying or picking on, and this is something I see with Libs of TikTok, is they'll say, oh, look at this woke librarian who is like promoting a tranny book or something. And while that's wrong and that's a problem, this is like some random librarian in some like small sleepy town in America who's a bit crazy. Probably the local community knows she's a bit weird and crazy, and it's kind of like you can't be going after small fish like that. You need to be going, but these engagement accounts, I think, are forcing people to go for small fish and to distract people on a large level.
Yeah, the other thing on X, on Twitter, is that you get I see these days you get a lot of these accounts who ask bloody obvious questions, you know, and they're just trying to get engagement, basically.
Yeah.
But do you think
Yeah,
this
and
is a good idea, or is this right? And they're obviously, you know, the questions a 5-year-old could answer if they were reasonably sensible. Yeah, as you say, they're just after engagement, and most of them are not, I don't think, are particularly good actors in that regard. There was one final subject I wanted to bring up briefly. That was, I don't know if you noticed, that according to Andrew Torber of Gab, the dude who shot Trump posted about 9 times on Gab. Did you see this?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so it's worth mentioning then, because if you missed it, I dare say some people in the chat will have missed it. Yeah, Torber did an announcement. I saw this on some video, but some American right sent a video, and this guy posted about 9 times on Gab pro mass immigration and pro Biden stuff, basically. So, you know, the mainstream media in America has been trying to spin this bloke as a Republican, which he definitely doesn't seem to have been, actually. You know, why would he have shot at Trump if he was? But yeah, he did about 9 posts on Gab, and Torber has said he's kept all these, and apparently the FBI are going to get them and what have you. But you know, whatever. But yeah, he was in fact a Biden supporting lefty who was very much in favor of open borders and all this kind of stuff. So no real surprise there, to be honest.
No, I mean, there's a lot of things being kept quiet about this guy. I mean, you would have expected to be wall-to-wall coverage, people journalists wanting to find out every bit of detail about this young man's life and and everything, and it's been kept largely under wraps. There's not been much talk about it at all. So yeah, he probably was some shitlib who tried to kill Trump.
Really does look like it, to be honest with you, which of course is not the narrative the mainstream media wants to put across. They want to pretend he was some sort of never Trump Republican, you know? But apparently not. But anyway, so yeah, that was the last thing I wanted to just briefly mention for anyone who hasn't seen it. They can go and look it up on. There's videos about it on YouTube, and I think it's been posted on X, on Twitter as well. But yeah. All right, guys, we will see you next week for Splendid Isolation number 183. I will try and get us a special guest during this week. Don't know who yet, but I will try and get us one for next week, just to mix things up a bit. But yeah, don't let the bastards grind you down, guys. I say this quite often, and it's the truth. You know, blackpilling, don't really see the point of it, to be honest. And you know, and accelerationism, well, if that's your deal, I don't care if you're 20, mate, you won't see the result. Almost certainly, I don't think you'll see the result. Can I speak about Kulok? I don't know anything about Kulok, Duke Valentino. Do you know anything about Kulok AI?
Kulok,
which is in Ireland,
no,
I believe.
what? There's well, I know there's something about rehouse. Was it to do with housing immigrants?
I'm sure it's to
or
do
something?
with immigration.
Yeah, it's been large community pushback. Yeah, that's it. People be referring to it as like the new plantation and stuff. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, going back to what I said, Ireland, like other communities in this country, they've have a long history of organizing and using political violence, and they're not making it easy for the Gardaí or the Irish government.
And good on them for that. Although, of course, we don't support violence at all on this channel. We are totally non-violent.
No. I mean, Sinn Féin have definitely had a bit of a have been most affected by this because they've exposed them to be what they don't call them West Brits, they're more like West Somalian supporters, basically.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
I mean, I know that you have like some dipshit Sinn Féin that will say supporters that say, "Oh, all these people are West Brits," and it's like, if somebody just put, like I saw on Facebook, someone just put "F off you, N-word lover." I mean, it was quite explicit. So the Sinn Féin tactics of just calling people West Brit no longer works. It may have worked in the 80s and stuff. It doesn't work now.
Well, I mean, Brits out, Somalians in is not really a good thing for a so-called nationalist Irish party to come out with.
It's quite, I mean, and in Ireland, yeah, I mean, the major cities are all still majority, at the moment, majority white Irish. This attempt in Coolock, it's an attempt to change that and to make it, a rainbow of various curries and in Nigerian spices.
And of course, there's only about 5 million Irish people, so it wouldn't take a lot to destroy Ireland as a majority Irish country, because there's only 5 million people there. I mean, the same thing applies to Scotland. This is, unfortunately for the Scots, the SNP took a bit of a hammering at the election. That was pretty good. But yeah, because the Scots are not really. The SNP are not really Scottish nationalists. They're just in favour of turning Scotland into a rainbow republic or whatever. They're certainly not in favour of the local real Scottish people at all. And the same thing applies to Sinn Féin, and also to the Welsh nationalists. They're no better either. Same sort of thing exactly. Strange to say. All of these
groups interesting to see how this
favour of replacing their own populations.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this plays. It'd be interesting to see how this plays out in Ireland, because again, if there's any one group in Europe that might, that will just go to, because the way that these things have been introduced is usually through what they would call fox techniques. It's not lions, not doing it through military force or defeat an open battle. This has been doing through subversive measures. But if the Irish decide to do the Irish thing and do what the Irish always tend to do when they have as they view it, foreigners in their land, how will this new plantation thing play out? Because I don't think many of the international elite are prepared for lion-like behavior, not fox behavior.
Well, I'm fully in support of the real Irish nationalists who are trying to keep Ireland for the Irish. Good luck to them. They're fighting the same battle that we're all fighting. So, 100%. They're fighting against replacement, which is what we're all fighting against, basically. So, that's my view on that. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, mate?
No, I think we covered everything.
All right. Well, as I say, we'll be back next week for Splendid Isolation number 183, hopefully with a special guest of some description, if I can get one, which I shall work on this week. Don't let the bastards grind you down, and we'll see you next week. And thank you, of course, to my guests, Mitch and AI. Go well, people.